Sir, the truth is I talk to God all the time. And no offense, he's never mentioned you.
Yeah, I love that line. And if you think, I don't like when characters just speak to themselves. So, I know this is really random, but in the Friday the 13th remake, there's a character just talking to himself. Like, there's so many characters just talking to themselves. And that would never happen. But this is a guy who has spent a lot of time alone, a lot of time on the run, maybe a lot of time in prison. He's obviously a loner, so he talks to God out loud. And that makes sense to me as a character that he would be speaking out loud constantly because he's talking to someone. He's not just narrating for a dumb audience.
Exactly. It's not just the inner monologue like, you would get in a comic book that kind of does that. It wouldn't make sense to say it out loud, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think everything he said, I was like, oh, I get it. It's cool. That makes sense. All right. So, music. Tell me about the music in this. Do you have the soundtrack? You can buy a CD. There's still some left.
I had a copy of the soundtrack when I was in high school. It was one of the things where I got my first car and it had a tape deck in it. And so you went to like the thrift store and looked through all the cassettes because it was all CD at that point in time. And I remember on the same day I found the soundtrack for Ghostbusters 2, Ladyhawke, and Beverly Hills Cop 3.
Was that the greatest day of your life?
Well, here's the thing. Everybody else had like music that was popular at the time in their cars. When people got in my car, they're like, "What are we listening to?" And I'm like, "Well," and before podcasting was a thing, I would just start riffing on movies. Yep. People in my car, like, what you're hearing right now is the soundtrack to Ladyhawke, directed by Richard Donner. And again, Mark, we came from a time. I was reminiscing about this today because I was going through an old box of stuff and I found my Blockbuster card. You know what I loved about the VHS era?
What's that?
What was that? It was pre-internet, right? So you couldn't like say, okay, I like Rutger Hauer. What else has he been in? That database didn't exist. But you'd go into the video store and then you go to the section that was not the new releases, and it was like an archaeological hunt. You'd go and you would look and you'd see just the cover of a box and right up in the back and say, I don't know what this is, but I'm going to take a stab at it. And you would put your money on the table, and that was your evening's entertainment. So sometimes now you'll start streaming a movie in 3 minutes, and you're like, this hasn't got my fancy. I'll see what else I can find. That was never the case. You were committed to watch the movie.
You had to, because you can't go back to the video store and spend more money.
No, you don't make another trip into town. It is what it is, but you found gold you never thought you'd find again.
Mm-hmm.
And so this was, to me, that this is that era. And, I miss that. But again, you'd see crazy soundtracks and you'd see like off the wall stuff. But this soundtrack, it's, I think, what sets this movie apart from any other fantasy movie from the 80s.
Just that, oh man, how do you explain it?
It's like a synthesizer symphony is what I would explain it as.
Yeah. Someone said if you just listen to it by itself, it's better than with the movie.
Yeah, they might not be wrong.
I mean, if someone argues against the synth score on this, I feel like it's a bit like picking low-hanging fruit. I wouldn't argue with them. That'd be a great argument, by the way. I would argue with them, because I want to argue about 1985 synth soundtrack. But I get it, right? The complaints against it. But it feels too easy.
Yeah, and again, I think the complaints about it were just like, this doesn't feel right.
Yeah.
That this doesn't. I don't like this. What was the movie with Rainn Wilson where he played the superhero?
The Rock. Oh, Super. No.
Super. Yeah. Super.
Oh, brother, that movie.
But I remember watching it the first time and being like, this doesn't feel right. Like, I don't feel like this is how you're supposed to make a movie.
James Gunn.
Right? But it was so like brutal. It was so like different than anything I'd seen. That was again on kind of the beginning of the renaissance of the superhero film, where they were like, and I just felt like this doesn't feel. I don't like this. Watching it again, there's some good stuff in the movie. There's some misses, but there's some good stuff there. But I think the initial watch, it was so jarringly different from anything I'd seen before. I was like, and I think that's what, because like you said, as Ladyhawke, the title is coming across the screen, you get hit with this synth punch to the face. It just goes.
Yeah. We'll have to play. We'll find it on YouTube when we come back from the break, and we'll just kind of play it.
Yeah.
We just got to have people hearing this thing. Or, you know what? Go on YouTube, just type in Ladyhawke score, and have the best moment of your day.
100%.
No, but I get what you're saying. when you're watching a movie, sometimes you're like, this something about this doesn't feel right.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, the score wasn't enough to make me think that. So,
Dude, sorry.
I just took it as the 80s because I had just watched Near Dark, right? Tangerine Dream score. We had done, Young Guns. We have a podcast coming out about that. They recorded a traditional score for that movie. And then when they realized no one wanted to hear that, they recorded a rock score.
Yeah, they got Bon Jovi to do it.
For the sequel. But the first one, they completely redid with different generic rock. So I had just gone through Young Guns. I had just gone through Near Dark. So maybe it was just the timing in which I watched this movie, but it felt much more normal to me.
Well, the same thing happened with Legend, right? They had a traditional soundtrack to it, and then they got Tangerine Dream to do it.
Yep. I love Sorcerer, dude. You know, Friedkin found him for 77's Sorcerer.
Really?
Friedkin was like, I want Tangerine Dream. So they did the score for Sorcerer. And he's like, if I would have known them beforehand, they would have done Exorcist.
Oh, so Yanni has a bunch of videos of him playing Ladyhawke's theme live.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
That's amazing. All right, send me I'll put that up on MFF Facebook.
Okay, I'll send you a link.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
Yikes.
All right, so how about this? Let's take a break. Let's listen to that. When we come back, we'll talk more Ladyhawke. Welcome back to Movies, Films, and Flicks. And Adam is currently in duck form. How you doing?
I'm doing well. Funny enough, when I'm in duck form, my voice doesn't change. Just my headset that I'm wearing fits way more awkwardly.
Yeah. So you said maybe we could wait, but we're both old. We can't stay up till past 11.
No, I was like, I gotta get going on here.
I can't wait for you to deduck.
No, my wife and I actually, right before we podcast, finished a season of Sons of Anarchy, and it left us on a cliffhanger.
Oh,
and
yeah. So
she was like, we got to finish this we got to resolve this cliffhanger tonight. And I was like, don't worry, we'll be fine.
All right, we'll get moving. I just want to say thank you for moving on in duck form, by the way. I appreciate it.
Whatever's best for the pod. I think I'm going to release a podcast only while I'm in duck form and call it the Pondcast.
Oh my gosh.
That's a good pun, right? That's a good pun.
The Pondcast? Oh, for sure.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Oh,
so
man.
I want to say, though, like, I love how excited you are about this movie. Like, we're tripping over each other a little bit tonight because we both have so much to say about it and so much, like, love for it. But every time I recommend you a movie, I don't know how it's going to go because it's the same feeling you get when you set two friends up on a blind date. Where you're like, oh, if this works out well, I'll probably be the best man at the wedding. If it doesn't, they'll probably both never talk to me again. Right? So there's when you recommend a movie to Mark, you're like, I hope this isn't jade him of my opinion of movies. Like, I hope that this isn't the one that breaks the deal. So the fact that you're this excited about this movie makes my heart feel good. You know what I mean? I
think the toughest one we had was Youngblood, and that turned out pretty good because I ended up liking the movie. But it was streaming nowhere, so I had to buy a 4-pack of Swayze movies.
I made you buy 4 Swayze films.
Yeah, which is awesome. But I already owned like 2 of them. But it was the same price to get 4. So I just like, all right, well, I guess I'll do this. But then I tried to like watch clips on it, but there's no clips about that movie. So that was the toughest one to do.
Was Youngblood the same year as Ladyhawke?
Was Youngblood 85?
I think so.
Jeez,
One second.
How could do you think Rob Lowe could have been good as Gaston?
I think he could have been good as Gaston.
Youngblood's 86.
86. Okay. So not the same year, but sort of the same year.
I got to tell you something. Matthew Broderick is a good runner, if you think about it.
So I saw a young Mel Gibson in his run.
Ooh, how was that?
Well, like when he was running, like Mel Gibson to me has the most intense. We've argued about this before, or no, we've discussed this before, that you're a Tom Cruise running guy. And I think that Mel Gibson has the best run in Hollywood, or did.
Oh no, my Tom Cruise isn't my favorite on-screen runner. I think he's one of the best, but it's just so pronounced when he runs. If that makes sense.
Yes.
There's another runner. You're putting me on the spot here, but there's I'm really flustered right now. But I think.
I'm sorry.
I think I thought Keanu Reeves was a very good runner.
Right.
There's another. Oh man, there's another runner. Oh, we'll talk about it in the next pod. But if you think about Broderick, right? Ferris Bueller, great running in that. This movie, great running.
great running.
Godzilla, he has a very weird run. Election, he's just running around a track.
It's a very weird movie.
Yeah, he's just running around a track. Matthew Broderick has done a lot more running in movies than people think.
Do you think it's one of those situations where the director's like, hey, for your character, what's the thing you're good at that we can put into the movie? And he's like, well, I can run.
He has a very distinct run, Matthew Broderick.
Because that's why a lot of John Cusack movies, he's also a kickboxer just by, like, hobby.
And he fights his trainer in 1408 and Grosse Pointe Blank.
Yes.
He just keeps bringing that guy into movies.
Yep.
We're on the same wavelengths, man. I should have let you finish your sentence, but I just knew exactly where you were going.
No, exactly. That's what I'm saying. Like, so I think that he was like, hey, what can you do, Matthew Broderick? And he's like, well, I'm an excellent runner. Let me show off what I got. It's like, you know what it's like? It's I'm gonna sound ridiculous doing this right now, but Taylor Lautner.
Yeah.
You know how he does that like spin breakdance kicky thing?
Yeah.
He does that in every movie he's in. He did it because he got the Shark Boy and Lava Girl role because he did that in his audition tape. And Rodriguez was like, I like that. And he does it in everything he does now.
Yeah, every movie. The Wolf does it when he turns into one.
Right. And I'll say this. I will take a Rutger Hauer wolf in a dogfight way over top of a Taylor Lautner wolf.
Because the Taylor Lautner wolf doesn't seem out to straight up murder. I feel like Rutger Hauer wolf is just throat.
Want to know why? Because every throat is the throat in the way of Isabeau.
That's right. Yeah, he'll do whatever.
One throat closer.
She's seen him do some weird stuff.
Right. I wonder if they did an anniversary showing of this movie, if it would do well.
Oh, man. It would have a very small, dedicated group. Because the amount of research I do, there's not much on this. If this movie was beloved, right, it would have many more articles.
Mm-hmm. But is it puzzling to you that it's not beloved?
Well, because here's the thing, though. Like, it doesn't have the swoon factor, right?
No.
I mean, Rutger is good, but he doesn't have the Tom Cruise swoon. It doesn't have. He was originally
to be the villain. He was supposed to be the bishop.
Yeah, and Mad Dog Russell was in it.
And Russell, but he just like quit like 3 days before the movie started filming.
And then
so they're like,
Rutger drove there in 2 days. Did you know that?
No, he drove there in 2 days in a custom made like motorhome he made out of a semi truck.
And he told everyone he was driving it, and they didn't believe him. And when he showed up, they were mad at him.
But he converted an 18-wheeler into a motorhome and then drove it from Holland to France or wherever they filmed this place.
Yeah, that's why he's such a weirdo, and I love it, right?
Yeah.
He's a very eclectic man. But right. So this movie doesn't have the A-list name, right?
No.
It didn't flop. It didn't flop enough to. It didn't make its money back. Yeah. And so, like, it's not a movie that made $1 million on a $20 million budget. It made like 19. So It didn't make its money back, but it didn't flop. So it won't ever make the flop list where people are saying that. Critics liked it. So it's not
nominated for 2 Oscars.
Yep, sound and sound editing.
Yeah.
And it's okay. So critics liked it. So if it had like an 8%, people would be like, "Oh, that's bullcrap." But it has a fresh rating, so people can't complain about that. But it doesn't have a 100% rating to put it at the top of lists. So, and then also the way Richard Donner did it with his verisimilitude.
Verisimilitude. That's my word, baby.
His dedication to realness. So the fight is not particularly bloody. There's no lamentations of women. There's no crushing of foes. There's no R-rated nudity. There is there's no really random young blood sex scene. There's no decapitations. There's really no shirtless scenes. It's just a nice love story. So I think by being what it is, it's not gonna grow a massive cult. If that makes sense.
Right, so what was that movie with
Kramer vs. Kramer?
Yeah, Kramer vs. Kramer. No, with Christopher Reeve and where he goes back in time to be with Dr. Quinn Medicine Woman.
What? I've never heard of that.
Yeah, Somewhere in Time. There's a movie called Somewhere in Time. And it's like he goes back in time to hang out with Jane Seymour by looking at a penny. And it's like this kind of weird movie. It's got like a 61% rating on Rotten Tomatoes, but there's a society that like it's like a Somewhere in Time.
It's a love story though, right? So
it's a love story, but there's like a whole group of people that just